And so you start a true crime podcast for the company's employees so that they'll engage with the story
Absolutely.
about the way they got hacked.
Absolutely.
The podcast is about the way they got hacked.
To help them not get hacked in the future. So that way they all remember.
Of course they'd listen to
they
that.
all know
I'd listen to that.
Now they all know the story of how they got hacked and the people that stopped the hack, the people that had to clean up the hack. But they were talking like you would hear a true crime investigator talk or a true crime, like the police officer of the case. It wasn't police officer of the case. It was just the, chief security officer within their organization or their vice president of security.
Very funny. I've never heard anything like that. Welcome back to episode 9 of Oh My Pod. I'm Justin.
And I'm Celine.
And today we have our second ever interview on the show, Mark Minnery, who is one of the best possible guests I think we could have ever possibly achieved on this show, which is awesome. So he's friends with Jacob Bozarth, who was episode 5 of Oh My Pod, so we'll get into that here. So Mark is a serial entrepreneur. He was previously a telecommunications executive who founded multiple companies. In 2017, he joined the wonderful world of podcasting by co-founding the podcast production agency called Resonate Recordings with Jacob, who, like I said, was the guest on episode 5. You can go listen to that. In 2019, Mark co-founded a different podcasting agency called Black Mountain Media, whose first podcast, Culpable, reached number 1 on iTunes and currently has over 40 million downloads. That's a true crime podcast, and it's phenomenal. You may have already heard of it if you're interested in podcasting. And most recently, in 2021, Mark embarked on a new endeavor with Jacob Bozarth called Resound. And it's an AI podcasting tool that saves audio engineers countless hours of painstaking, monotonous editing. That is very true. I've used it. And we talked lots with Jacob last time. It's a fantastic idea, and it's going to blow up. I know it. So Mark, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff that we want to get into, but first of all, I just want to hear, like, from your perspective, how your life sort of went to the kind of how you transitioned from doing kind of like, cold hard business into the world of podcasting and creativity and endeavors and all that stuff. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've always been kind of, interested in business and starting new things. I have just one of those personalities that likes to try stuff and start stuff. So in 2002, I started my first company, telecom company. Over the years, I've had several companies that we kind of dabbled in, but either sold or didn't succeed. But those telecom companies were always kind of my staple, and just slowly grew into. When I left Single Point, when I finally sold it to a private equity firm, it was the number one or the largest telecom consulting firm in Kentucky. And so,
wow, just briefly, just for me, I don't know what telecommunications even is actually.
Yeah, so
we realized as you're saying that.
Yeah, we would design networks for companies, for banks, for healthcare organizations. And design the wide area networks that would connect those securely, and then also later do the phone systems, the IP telephone systems. Pretty much everything that wasn't a network inside a building, we supplied. And so a lot of SaaS products. And so it was really more sales organization, but I kind of had a technical background in telecom for years. So
cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And, doing that for, almost 20 years. I had started in telecom probably when I was in 1997. And so that's when I started in telecom. So,
awesome.
Yeah. By the time I got to the end, I was just burnt out. Had been just kind of climbing, building, and then started getting private equity money and doing roll-ups and mergers. And it honestly just sucked the life out of me as an individual. Some people thrive in that. I'm an introvert. I kind of lead quietly in the organization. I need a lot of time to think and just be quiet. And in the industry I was in, it just never gave me that opportunity. So when I had an opportunity to sell out, and all those assets were gone. I had already been a part of Resonate in 2017. We had started Black Mountain Media in 2019 and did Culpable. And then I sold the company right when we were raising money for Resound, and we started raising venture capital money. So,
wow,
super, super cool. And so Black Mountain Media merged with Resonate, right?
Yes, yeah, we merged it back in 2021 and signed a multi-slate deal with Tenderfoot TV, and so we're in the middle of doing those shows now. We had our second show come out last year, Undetermined, which also hit number 1. So we're really excited about that.
I read about that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that.
I feel like I'd heard about that from just through the grapevine or whatever, which is great for you. Yeah, we've been, to be honest, we've just been super blessed by that partnership with Tenderfoot, giving us an opportunity to allow us to make shows. And I can kind of rewind a little bit, when we kind of get into Culpable and how all that played out. So, for me, I really love creators. I love supporting creators. I'm not naturally a creative. That's just not how I'm wired. But I love creative things. And so after having just critical burnout, for me, it was just really important to kind of jump back in the seat and, dive full force into creating tools that help creators, helping creators tell their vision and brands to just, to kind of execute their vision. And then with our own stuff, supporting our team to help, make our individuals or our original shows. And so, podcasting just feels like home. It hasn't been the industry that I'm used to, but man, I love it. And I love the people, and the industry is young. So there's not like this establishment so much that there was in telecom. There was no AT&T. I guess there's Spotify now, but but even that, even with companies like Spotify, I mean, they've reached out to us before with Resound and to do social media stuff, and even the big players in the game work with the some of the smaller upcoming companies, and it's really awesome, and that's just it's a kind of a breath of fresh air for me. Yeah, so you kind of climbed the corporate ladder, and then you burnt out like crazy because that's I guess the culture, which is like that in a lot of business. Yeah. And then this was just sort of a way for you to continue your career in a way that was more free. And also, I see what you're saying about like you're not a creative, but I guess you probably I would think that you actually probably would be, because you said that you like to start new things and build new things. So in one way or another, definitely are a creative person.
Yeah, I feel like he's a really good synergy with the creative person.
With creative people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I'm somebody who really needs some type of like analytical person on the back end to manage the things that I start, because the things that I start usually at some point I stop wanting to there's the fire is gone, and then it's on to the next thing, and then I'll come back to that thing. But it's not like that doesn't work. I mean, that's the way that I think of a lot of entrepreneurs work. But it's cool that you now are using like your expansive knowledge in the world of business to support people who are creative, who frankly just don't really want to think about that type of stuff.
I think also just in running organizations, for me, and having critical burnout and realizing kind of what's important in life. I have 5 kids, and they're
I read that. Yeah.
From college down to, my youngest is going into kindergarten next year. And so
you get to spend lots of time with them because you're only working 20 hours a week from home, right?
Yeah, I was the year after I sold the company before Resound.
But now you're working more.
Yeah, I spent about a year working part-time, about 20 hours a week, especially as we were prepping to raise for Resound.
Right, yeah.
And then as we were, basically setting up a new management team to take over for Resonate Recordings, as, Jacob needed to kind of go full into Resound, because that's what we owed the investors is full attention on that venture. And so, part of my role is to make sure that, that our originals product, our production services, both are moving forward especially in Jacob's absence. So
right, okay, very cool.
I think it's crazy to see how it changes a person when they work too much and when they work the right amount, because
where they're supposed to work.
I remember seeing it. I used to be a teacher in elementary school last year, and I just always saw the difference between a part-time teacher and a full-time teacher.
Yeah.
The part-time teacher just had so much more, was just overall a better teacher, but also in their private life better. And I feel like, especially when you have a family, this is so important. Yeah. And also for your business, it's really important that you can be the best version of yourself. Whereas when you're burned out and stressed out, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, we really have tried to build a culture too, where our people can say, "Hey, I need time. I need a break. I need rest."
Yeah. Same with us.
We do unlimited PTO. It's just put in a request and take time off. We do a forced week of vacation at the end of the year just to make sure people rest and spend time during the holidays at home. And we set up our company to where we know how long it takes to do certain items, and if it's taking longer, then either we underquoted it and need to assist you, or there's certain reasons. So for us, it's just I just want a good balanced life for all of our employees. It's just really important to me.
Yeah.
Just briefly before I ask you, we start talking about Culpable, I just want to mention that this is making me think of one of our clients just actually had on a woman named Fatima Zaidi. I don't know if you know who that is. Mm-mm. She's the founder of Quill Podcasting.
Okay.
And she's very, very successful. She's awesome. She was a great guest on the show. And so he interviewed her, and I was actually listening to her talk about her life of kind of dealing with like the hustle culture and all these things, because she was like Forbes 30 under 30 like 2 times. So obviously very deep into the business sector and just the grind culture. And she said that one thing that she would tell everybody now is that the part of being an entrepreneur is also realizing that your career is only like 1/5 of your life. And being a good entrepreneur means not just having success in that 1/5, but having success in all of them. And that's being health, time with family, relationships, all these things. And even like, Gary Vee was somebody that I looked up to a lot when I was starting in like to become an entrepreneur or whatever. And he was all about, working all the time, don't sleep, don't eat, like just do. And apparently now he went on to the Diary of a CEO. And our client, the host of that podcast, said that he was almost in tears of the message that he had been kind of pushing for so long, and said that I think he's experiencing some regret over that message that he pushed, because he's realizing that that's not as important. Like over $70,000 a year, there's really no market increase in happiness or fulfillment. And so some people can make $70,000 a year and be just as happy as the person making $1 million, but also have way more time. So it's really about how you want to shape your life in particular, depending on the things that you like to do. Like, I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like, we like making money. It's a lot of fun, and it's also fulfilling to see that as a result of pursuing something that you find meaningful, that there's like a monetary compensation is really rewarding to see. It shows that you're kind of going in the right direction at least. But for some people, it's just not important. It really isn't at all. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Definitely.
It turns into a vicious cycle. I mean, for me, my personal experience, right? This is 3 years ago. My personal experience was that once the stress took over, then that turned into anxiety, which turned into lack of sleep, which turned into health issues, which turned into more anxiety, which turned into hopelessness, which turned into really poor performance at work. Even though I was trying to do 70 hours of work, I was only doing 20 hours of actual work because I was just dealing with my everything going on. And so it was like, I just hit that point where I pushed through so many years that I literally needed just to take time away to like let my brain and body heal.
Just to really breathe hard. A bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So
I totally understand that.
Now we have super stressful seasons. We have we have deadlines. There's times when we have to work a lot, but it's not the culture of our company to say you need to stay enslaved. But sometimes, especially when you're doing, podcasts, you're listening to audio, you don't want to stop. You just want to keep going.
Honestly, Well, that's the way you want to be working,
Yeah,
though. You want to
absolutely.
feel like you can't step away and
For
then have
sure.
to force yourself to
Yes.
step away.
Yeah.
Not be waiting for the moment when you get to step away. Like that's how you know that you might not be in the right spot. So yeah, that's really cool. I think that's just like really, really important, especially for people my age, just to hear like, man, you do not need to work all the time. You do not need to spend 70 hours, 80 hours a week working. If you want to, grind it out, build something, but then figure out how you can build it and then step away from it and have things work on their own, because other than that, you're just going to build yourself a life that requires you to be somebody that you're not all the time, and that's just too much.
There's a major point of diminishing returns. It's just a point where it becomes destructive and
exactly. But I feel like that the younger generation is really stepping away from that. I think the millennials were the last ones that were really taught to like just grind, and I feel like even like the people that are a bit younger maybe than you, Justin, are starting to like, they already are being taught that.
Yeah, that's what Fatima was saying as well.
Yeah, the continuous grind is actually not it.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's definitely shifting.
Okay, so let's talk about Culpable. So this is a true crime podcast that you started under Black Mountain Media Productions, which I'm a little confused about because you were part of Resonate, but then you had another one. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, just run us through like how that whole kind of thing came to be, and then I would love to get into some of the nitty-gritty details of the actual podcasting side of that.
Yeah. So while I was working in telecom, my office manager was my brother-in-law, Dennis Cooper. And so Dennis and I, along with Jacob, were all close friends. Our offices were next to each other, and Dennis and Jacob worked together before he started Resonate. So they were in insurance billing together. So
cool.
So we were all friends anyway, and we were in the same office park, and that way I could go from Single Point, walk over to Resonate, check on things, go to meetings, and I had the two companies next to each other. And so just let me kind of be at a hand's distance away just to help out if there was something going on or just to check in, and hang out with my friend, right? And so we decided, hey, we have this relationship with Tenderfoot and we really want to make our own content. Will they let us make a show? And so we talked to Donald Albright with Tenderfoot and said, hey, Donald, look, we've done some work for you guys. We really appreciate you guys as a partner. Would you guys put out a show with us? And they said, yeah, just pitch us some ideas.
And how were you working with Tenderfoot at the time? Like, how did you know them?
So, when we first launched Resonate, one of the things that Jacob did was he went and cold called the top 100 shows in Apple and just reached out to every one of them saying, hey, I'm new to the industry. I'm looking for work. Here's what we're doing. I have my master's in audio engineering. Here's kind of my resume. And Payne Lindsay from Up and Vanished, at the time, the show was like, number 17 or something. And we were all listening to it. And he reached back and said, yeah, I could really use some help. And so Tenderfoot became a client right away. The case gets solved. It shoots number one. We're getting shout outs in it. And that helped us kind of launch Resonate. We owe a lot to Payne and to Donald, both. And so we, had a partnership and worked on a bunch of stuff for them. We've actually written shows for them and done some other work for them in the past. But we said, hey, can we put out some shows together or put out a show together? And I said, find an idea. And we said, great. We pitched a couple of shows. They passed on their ideas. And then we were at CrimeCon in 2018. And the cousin of Christian Andriaco, who's the main subject of Culpable, approached our team and said, hey, I have this story. This happened to my cousin. My aunt's been doing all this work, all this research, and can't get anywhere. Would you help us? And so we got a copy of the flash drives of the documents and started reviewing them. And Dennis and I said, yeah, let's write up a pitch deck. And we sent it to Tenderfoot. They greenlit it right there. And we spent the next year making Culpable. And, at the time, Jacob's running Resonate, which is, at the time, really, that's when things were really booming in the beginning, where it's just like this crazy 2x, 3x growth every year, in that beginning stages. And so dealing with that, and then Dennis and I were both still running Single Point. So we were doing it in the evenings and taking vacation time or taking time off from work to go do do a 1 week recording trip. and then come back, and then 4 weeks later go down and do a 4-day recording trip. And ended up doing 7 recording trips. It was a 6-figure budget to make the show. And luckily we had our own engineers, and so we were able to use Dayton Cole and Pat Kickletter, some of our best engineers, and just said kind of go to town. And really, for us, it was our introduction into podcasting, and we said let's shoot for the moon and let's go big. And
Right.
And Tenderfoot had a really good track record. Every show they had done at that point had gone to number 1, and so we felt good coming off of Live and Die in LA that we could do good coming off that show. And so we and then for us it was really important. The things that were super important were we want a very compelling story that we can highlight the family and their emotions. Like, we don't want to not let people feel what they're feeling. And that's really important to us. 2 was we wanted the sound design to be like as next level as possible, even though we're doing all these recording trips in places where you can hear the refrigerator and everything else that just drives you nuts. That was really important. So we took binaurals down and did events with binaurals to capture all that crazy sound design. And so for Culpable, for me, when people say they listen to Culpable like in their car, it breaks my heart. I'm like, oh, please put on headphones. It's meant for headphones because there's so much sound design.
That reminds me of somebody.
Yeah, there's so
Audio
much sound
engineer.
That reminds me.
Yeah.
And,
That's me with my music as well.
Yeah, because he writes music, and every time no, put headphones on. What are you doing?
Yeah, every time.
Every time. I know this.
And so, it was a really big kind of side project that we were doing in the midst of the company. And I was really lucky. I have a really good friend, Neil DeGrade from Dirt Poor Robins. He's a fantastic musician, just brilliant. Scores movies. And so we were able to hit him up and say,
he had everything,
man, I really need some cool music, and I want something that has the feeling of Mississippi and struggle. Can you write me a theme song? And he gave us the song Meridian Prime, which is the opening to Culpable, which is, it's my favorite thing ever. I absolutely love that. And so,
I'm gonna go back and listen to that.
Yeah. So for us, it was really exciting. And then we launched it. We had no clue what was going to happen. And we were like, are we going to make money on this? Like, are we going to lose a whole lot of money on this?
Oh yeah.
And, but that was kind of the fun thing. 'Cause honestly, by the end of it, we did not care if we didn't make a dime. It didn't matter. We were so bought into helping the family, getting the story out there, and we just wanted ears to hear it. And we were really blessed. It did really well. The audience really got into it. It was, but yeah, when you say what is it like to have a big podcast, there's just a lot of interaction that happens that's just you're not prepared for. You're not prepared for the social media stuff. You're not prepared for just all the rumors and stuff, the accusations that come out, like the mom of the victim is a producer paying for us to make the podcast and stuff like that.
Oh, I see that type of stuff.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. That 2% of crazy comes out when you're talking, 3 million people. 2 or 3% of that is a lot versus
a lot of people.
If you're talking 10,000 people,
sure.
you have 3% are kind of like, whew, this is intense. There are some intense people online, and so just learning how to deal with that, because quite frankly, none of us are real big online presence. We kind of do our thing. We're not, I don't.
I know. I've noticed that. Yeah. I could only find you on LinkedIn, and even that was a bit sparse. So I totally know that. That's really weird. So the actual show itself. So I kind of want to get into some of the details of. So you've got 40 million downloads on it.
Yeah.
So roughly how many people were involved in the actual show? I want to know. The kind of the structure behind how that actually works.
Yeah, I would say Culpable season 1's not the best blueprint to make a podcast when it comes to workflow, right? Because it was a side deal. we weren't even using any of our internal systems the way we normally would use them. So,
Right.
we wrote our own software for project management within our own process of our, for our clients, but we weren't using it with Culpable just because it was kind of being done in Dropbox on the side. It was just one of those
it was outside of your agency.
outside of the ecosystem at the time. As we've gotten further along with newer shows, they've kind of been pulled into our ecosystem. So, but no, Culpable, it would be, we'd start off by, first doing research, and we'd had at that time just 3 of us doing all the research, reading through. We would actually pull in, Dennis's wife, Courtney, would come in and review documents as well. It was just kind of an all team effort. And then as we started getting to recording, we would go down, Jacob, Dennis, and myself, which are kind of the 3 of the partners at Resonate, because when we bought Black Mountain, Dennis came in, and part of that purchase was kind of a merger. And so now Dennis is a part of Resonate. And so when we went down, originally it was just, grab audio. We'd go down a team of 4 often, and then come back and, we have hundreds of hours of audio, 60 some interviews,
60 interviews.
Yeah, it took
with like the family, and then like what, witnesses and stuff, or like different people around them,
friends, government employees. We also had 9 private investigators, and so all of those interviews got recorded.
Were you paying those people, or were they doing it just because they?
So we were really fortunate that at the time we were doing a show with Sheila Wysocki, who was a private investigator, and we were actually editing her show for Resonate. And so when she found out about the story, she offered up to call a bunch of her friends and see if they would give us their time. So they all took, a week out of their time here. Sheila took multiple time. She's still kind of involved in it even. And then we just paid for all the travel to send them around the country. So, we had 5 people down in the Florida Keys for a week. We had people up in
that's not cheap to
travel
people like that
too. And
that's not cheap.
Hotel rooms were like $1,400 a night, and so we're trying. And we're just trying to craft our audience.
And like the budget was supplied by Tenderfoot.
No,
was there outside, like, this is what I don't understand, because I'm not, like, I'm still quite young, so I feel like this is something that you understand only with time in all kinds of business industries in the back end. I just don't understand who is paying and where, who's in charge of what kind of thing.
Yeah, in this we were so we formed Black Mountain Media, and then I loaned us the money. We put our money just
you loaned the money.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we borrowed the money and for that venture, and it was separate from Resonate. So we were able to then we could basically hire ourselves to do all the editing and do all the post work. Plus, Jacob being an engineer, and he did a lot of the editing and sound design, and then he'd hand off to one of our other engineers to do a mix, and then another engineer to kind of do the final one would score, and then one would mix, and then they'd kind of do a final. We'd do a final review, and then we'd print the master.
Cool.
Yeah. So no, it was very much. It probably touched between the investigators, the experts that we contacted, and then our paid team and our Resonate team. There was probably 25 people who touched that show in some way or another. And then that doesn't include also, we have marketing support with Beck Media. We had
I bet
Tenderfoot support, and we also had feed drop support. So I think we got 9
feed drop. Dropping the. I know what you mean by
9.
that. Yeah,
we had
but
our,
maybe
our
just
trailer
briefly,
got dropped into I think 9 feeds.
And so other podcasts.
Yeah,
right?
so instantly we were able to find an audience, and it's finding the audience and holding on to them. That's the hard part, and especially a 15 episode show. Yeah,
so I have a like. Something just popped in my mind, but before I say that, it's just so weird that, like, if you think about podcasting as an industry, like, we are helping people mostly like coaches and business people, entrepreneurs, all those types of people build like, affordable shows that help them kind of get their message out there. No worries, that's part of podcasting, as everybody knows. We'll wait one sec. We'll probably just keep that in, honestly. That just shows, like, here we are, like, doing podcasts. This is what happens.
Yeah, it happens a lot when we're recording Culpable, too.
Of course. Of course. No, don't worry about it at all.
Delivery person comes.
Yeah, no worries at all. So we'll just power through the dog. So I was wondering, like, what was I saying? What was I saying? About, yes, the different, so podcasting is obviously one industry, but we help people on a much smaller scale kind of like grow their audiences and build themselves into, like, get their voice and their message out to the people who might want to hear it. And then that helps them kind of generate clients and generate revenue. But like, that is a completely different world than what you're talking about. And and I think people still think of podcasting as a somewhat of a small industry.
Yeah.
So what exactly, like, what would you say to somebody who thought that podcasting was sort of a niche industry when you guys are doing something like essentially building what's equivalent to an entire like TV show, like what a TV show is, or what a movie is, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like you're on a completely different level. Like the 0.001% of podcasts are doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And it's a scary venture too, because you don't know what the returns are. And with some of those early shows that we did, we're doing it off of a small draw. You're not doing it off of a full budget. And, I think that, you have to calculate what, when we did Culpable season 1, we weren't worried so much about the budget as we were making just the most incredible show that we could with the time that we had. And
totally.
We had a deadline too, so that was the other hard part. You're trying to do this show with a deadline because they sell the release date, start selling the ads, and you're just like, we have to deliver. And by the end, we were finishing up episodes the week of.
Of course, by
the end, and so it's just crazy. It's an insane scale that is really scary, and there's a lot of, I think, things for us that we had to think through that made us take the risk, which is just who is your partner, what is the potential exposure. It's really hard to break in right now too, especially on to break into the top 100 is still hard to do.
I bet
just because there's so many new shows coming out.
Yes, that's
every
very
week,
true.
and so and so many episodes coming.
Yes.
When did Culpable release?
2019. Season 1 released, and we released season 2 in December of last year.
Okay. Is there going to be a season 3?
Yeah, it sounds crazy impressive.
What's that?
It sounds crazy impressive.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah.
It's just crazy the difference, like Justin said, between, I mean, I think most people still think about podcasting like that indie podcast, but this is crazy. This is like a TV series, right? Like a proper. That's what
I think
is.
Though the market is changing, and that's one of the things that's interesting is when we first got into it, these kind of 12 episode, 10 to 12, 15 episode true crime long form stories was the kind of the demand. It's what had hit. It was the serial, the S-Town. All those types of shows were doing really well, and that's kind of where the market was going. The market's changed. It's a lot harder to sell a show like that. It's hard to get the advertising onto a show like that, and kind of the always on model is what is being demanded, I guess, by the market. And so I think that's driven a lot by advertising more than it is by fans.
Okay.
So for us, as a business, we have to make the decision of what does always on look like for us as a studio. We're working on a daily show right now that'll be researched, recorded, produced all the same day with topics.
I've heard of people doing that. That is something that, again, you need a designated team whose job it is to do that. It's a major undertaking. Like people I don't think, well, maybe they do, but I just don't think people understand the level of the level of everything that goes into just even putting a podcast out. Like there's so many quality checks, there's so many little things that can go wrong, and then you have to go back. And so very, very cool. I really like that we have somebody on who's been part of a show like that, because like I said, I don't know the exact statistics, but it's a tiny percentage of shows that have ever even become close to that. So that's been really, really cool to talk about. I'm just flipping through my questions because I know that there's one thing I really wanted to ask about that. Yeah. So this is what I'm really curious about. And you don't have to go into crazy detail about this, but where did the listeners come from? Like, what were the advertising channels that performed the best? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is if you had $100,000 and the show was already completely produced and you had a completely like fire, awesome show, and you had $100,000 to dedicate towards some type of marketing and you could just put it anywhere, like what exactly were the channels that brought people into that type of show?
Yeah, I would say if I had money to spend and I'm trying to launch a show that I'm trying to get into the charts, right? And not for the goal of being in the charts, but the goal of getting exposure from the charts to then get more listeners, to then get more followers, then to tell that story more and more and more. Yeah. Honestly, feed drop. I would pay for feed drops.
Really? Hey.
Yeah.
Are they really expensive?
Feed drops. Well, depends on whose feed drops you're doing. So, if you're looking at kind of the traditional sense of, hey, I'm going to buy a feed drop on a top show from top studio, a lot of those are feed swaps or ad swaps. It's a trade between one studio saying, I'll give you 500,000, you give me 500,000 in December when my new show comes out. And so they do a lot of that. So purchasing, but there are, people who do purchase feed drops. And so if you don't have your own content and you're trying to get out
to do it,
the way I would do it if I was a smaller creator is find other podcasts that have the audience that you're going after, that same brand that you're going after. So if you sell coffee and you're focused on a you have a military based brand, find the podcast that talks to that audience, and
it should be easy to find.
And you buy feed drops on smaller podcasts that have a concentrated audience versus bigger podcasts that have a broader audience. And so find your niche
for sure,
and then build your audience from there. It is about audience building now, especially when you have more always on, like weeklies, dailies, bi-weeklies.
Do you think like you're going to spend like $1,000 on a smaller podcast, like maybe like a podcast that's getting like 500 listeners an episode or something like that? Is it like 1,000 or is it?
There's I gotta be honest, I don't. I don't
know. That's all good.
The one thing that we probably don't do is do ad sales. That's just something we don't really touch into as an agency. We really
we don't either.
So we really focus.
That's why I was asking you. I was hoping you knew.
No, and for us, with our own original shows, we had basically ad partners who were selling the ads for us, and so we didn't really get it. We approved who could read an ad. So if there's something in there that we just didn't like the product or didn't know, but everything else, I don't think we actually turned any ads down. But So for us, when I have new clients who are looking for that, we really say, what is your network? We have doctors, so we do a lot of people in the medical profession, and one of the things we say is,
I've heard a lot about medical podcasts.
And so one of the things we'll say is, what's your influence? Do you have any friends who have podcasts? Can you get can they drop your trailer in there? Can you be a guest on there? It's that whole kind of exposing yourself to the audience. That is the tried and true that works. It really does.
I was doing some research the other day. I went down a rabbit hole, and that's exactly what people are saying. Like, and also like finding some like another podcast, but that is completely in your niche, and don't be afraid to go, to niche down like crazy on that.
Yeah.
Because like you said, that's gonna be a listener that keeps on listening.
Yeah.
Right?
And for us, I know for us with studios, the studios we work with, they all do ad swaps and feed swaps together. And it's really kind of great to see the creator community really supports each other. I mean, I don't look at any of the other companies that do what we do so much as competitors is just part of the ecosystem. And
that's why we're on this call right now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's only so much, like we only need like 15 to 20 clients. So like, I mean, how many, that's nothing. Like we literally might as well be doing completely different things. It just doesn't even matter. But we're having this conversation, even though we may be looked at as whatever competition, but truly, I think we know that we're actually not, because we would never claim to do what you guys do in your company. We have a completely different target and a completely different goal, right?
Yeah.
And so why not? I mean, like we learned so much from Jacob, and now we learned so much from you from a completely different side of things too, right?
Yeah.
Because you're incredibly knowledgeable about the business, and even just all the words that you use when you're talking about business. It's like like it's like it's cool because you can just tell that you're just so deep in that, and that's your life, that they just kind of come out, and I'm like, oh, what? Like, oh, cool. Like, I want to be able to do that.
I gotta be honest. I'm not much of a reader, right? So I have terrible dyslexia, and I have ADHD. So I don't like to read. I can over years you just get better and better at reading but I don't retain things when I read them. And honestly, I don't love long emails because I'm just like halfway through, I'm just like, oh, this is such a chore. Like, give me bullet points, It's just my personality. And it's just one of those things, like I have to amp myself up when I see a 4-page email. I'm just like, oh, this is going to take a while for me. Like, it just doesn't. So things like audiobooks, kind of, that's where that and documentaries is a lot of where I just love to consume information. I'm a learner. I feel like, I like to ask questions. I like to think a lot about problems, and I like to know how things work. And so podcasting has been that for me. Like, I spend 5 hours a day with a podcast in my ear. I go to bed at night and there's a podcast usually playing in my ear. And
you're a true podcast fanatic.
I am truly a podcast junkie.
So I have a question. So you said that the market's changing away from kind of what Culpable is. So I have two little questions. The first one is, and I'll ask them both and then I'll let you answer. So I think the first one is, would you listen to something like Culpable or a true crime podcast? And then the second one is, do you think that the industry is, like, when we look at the stats, the majority of the people who listen to podcasts are highly educated. They've got like degrees. They're listening to learn. They're listening to educate themselves on problems that they're facing in whatever in their careers. So like, I personally, I don't listen to podcasts for entertainment. I only listen to learn about things because that's my time to learn. And like you just said, that's your time to learn as well. So would you listen to something like Culpable? And do you think the industry is moving because the people who listen to podcasts are looking to more like educate themselves on specific niche topics rather than listen for entertainment?
Well, I think the industry is moving because the ad sales are unpredictable when your show isn't always on. And so that's part of the
when
reason.
Your show isn't always on, right?
Yeah, so when you have seasons, when you have unpredictable seasons, and true crime is unpredictable. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can schedule to release one every November if I wanted to, and that'd be fine. Yeah. But the way we do our stories, it's unpredictable, and when we'll be out. So for advertisers, the more predictable the audience is going to be there, that they know, oh, well, we have a movie coming out in November that we need to, do these ads the 3 weeks before to do an ad push.
They need to plan way ahead.
Yes, and they know that you're on. And so I think for the reason that it's changing is not so much for the audience's purposes as much as it is the advertising. And that's the sad truth.
The money's driving it.
I love long-form narrative storytelling. It's absolutely my favorite thing. My favorite podcast is, S-Town. It's like just brilliant storytelling in my mind. And
it's so comforting to listen to that stuff too, with the
Right?
music and the sound effect. I just love that.
yeah, I like good
I
sound
love Business
design.
Wars too. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Amazing. Yeah.
but at the same time, I'd say 50% of my podcast listening, just for me, is 50% is probably learning and 50% is just entertainment. And it doesn't mean that sometimes learning is the entertainment for me. So it's just it's something
I'm sure you learn.
sure.
Sure, you learn plenty of things also though from something like Culpable or a true crime podcast. Like I mean, there's all sorts of things that you pick up whenever you're listening or watching anything. So yeah, of course.
And there's just certain podcasters out there that if they come out with a new show, no matter what it is, I'm going to check it out just because I like their stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And there's so much different learning as well. Like I know that there's learning that is that's connected with my job, like with work, but then there's learning that I really enjoy that is
personally
because I'm just interested in whatever it is, right? So like it's very different.
Yeah, I mean one of the things we try to do is to help brands see how podcasting can be used in different ways within their organization. That's engaging.
That's interesting.
So, for instance, we had a client, I won't name the client, but, we had a client who they were having terrible time getting any kind of engagement internally on cybersecurity. What's the big whoop? It's just cybersecurity. Well, they had been hacked multiple times and had ransomware because of things that had happened internally. And so, they're like, we just need better engagement. And so one of the things that we were looking at doing, and I think this is just a good example for all those businesses, ways to think outside the box. Is we said, what if we make a true crime internal podcast, and we use your failures as an organization to protect your team. So we use these failures, and we literally have your CIO come on and say, here's how we were breached. It wasn't because our software is outdated. It's because we had somebody in accounting who opened up an email that they shouldn't have opened up. And then this is the damage it did. And this is what it took us to back trail all the way back. And so you tell some of those types of stories, not in a way to shame the employee, but to tell them this is the end result. And here's how we got here. And you don't have to train them on what not to do. They hear what not to do in the story. And so
now that is funny.
And so the engagement on something like that was 7 times the email engagement, and people listened for 26 minutes, and they got to understand more about three episodes on cybersecurity on different stories that just kind of helped them understand. Oh wow, this is why I'm not supposed to open these emails that I don't know where they're from, and they have weird attachments. And it's just,
okay, so you had. You literally had a company, like a big company with obviously, lots of employees.
This is a Fortune 100 company. Yeah.
So they weren't listening to the advice of how to not get hacked.
They just had super low engagement. So they'd send out a company-wide email or a division-wide email, and they might get
they just wouldn't open it.
They might get 1,400 emails. The rest of them just go go to junk or don't get open, get deleted because it's just a company notification email, and they're like, it's
and you don't,
of course.
And so you start a true crime podcast for the company's employees so that they'll engage with the story about the way they got hacked.
Absolutely.
The podcast is about the way they got hacked.
To help them not get hacked in the future. So that way they all remember.
Of course they'd listen to
they
that.
All know
I'd listen to that.
Now they all know the story of how they got hacked and the people that stopped the hack, the people that had to clean up the hack. But they were talking like you would hear a true crime investigator talk or a true crime, the police officer of the case. It wasn't police officer of the case. It was just the, chief security officer within their organization or their vice president of security.
Very funny. Yeah. I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah. It's really one of our jobs is to help brands just understand why am I doing a podcast? And then, what is the goal? And it doesn't have to just be brand engagement to your community, but it can be engagement on certain topics just within your organization or division. And podcasting doesn't have to be super expensive. I mean,
I actually did a segment for a brand called Norco. They're the bike manufacturers, mountain bike manufacturers, and they just did a 12 episode internal podcast for they're another 500 employee company, I'm sure, and they just they did a podcast that just went on their Instagram, and it was a private page, and they just sent that to their employees, and they were like, "This is who owns the company, and here, get to know them a little bit," and it was 12 little short episodes just shared internally. And that was the first time I kind of realized, if a company has some extra income to spare, and they want to do their internal kind of education and culture building differently than normal, like differently than just using emails or like, talks in the office or something, like meetings or whatever. Then they just do this, and it's like, okay, here's a way to like outsource your like culture within your company. You just get to like listen to this episode. Okay, so that was incredibly valuable. I like doing this just personally because I learn a lot of stuff, and I learned a lot of stuff today, and I'm really, really happy that we've had you on. And I guess you don't really want to be found on social media because you don't do it so much. But if people wanted to find, like, there's Resonate recordings, there's Resound, and those are probably the two places, right?
Yeah, resound.fm, resonaterecordings.com.
Yeah, we'll link all that as well, and it's linked in episode. And
you can find me at Mark Minnery on social
Minnery,
media.
okay.
Yeah, I have a Twitter out there somewhere.
Oh, cool.
I'm just not very active.
Yeah,
it's just not my thing.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, and we get that now from hearing your story and everything, and that's obviously all good, and seems like it's working really well for you. It's cool to hear that you've kind of fallen into exactly where you're meant to be, and also the whole thing with Culpable. I find it really admirable that you guys, you put a lot of money into that, but like you said, it was more about the endeavor itself, and not about making money or about any type of success. It was really just, okay, let's do this and let's do it right, because there's a bigger pathway to this, and it just reminds me of music, because I write a lot of songs, and the best songs are written when you're not thinking about, who am I going to pitch this song to? Who is this going to be good for K-pop though? Is it going to be good for pop? What if that chord doesn't work over? It's like, no, write the damn song and see what happens afterwards, because nobody ever wrote a song that connected with so many people by formulating it like a product or thinking about it like a business. It's like, write your song, and the rest, if it was meant to be, will fall into place, because that's the way that the world works, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us, it's just really important to tell the human side of stories. If we were just going to make a true crime podcast that just did the facts, there's nothing. Yeah. There's no substance there. It's kind of about the human experience, like the hearing, the suffering, the loss of hope. It kind of makes it real when you're understanding how some of these people are responding to the trauma that they've experienced through the loss that they've experienced. And it's just, I have a lot of empathy. And so I like to be able to let listeners hear that and just understand that there was real suffering that happened in this tragedy, and that's why we're so dead set on trying to figure out what happened, is because we felt that, and so we want to help them. And I'm
going to go listen to that whole podcast. I listened to the first episode, but I'm going to go and do the rest, because I love sound design as well, so I'm definitely your ideal listener.
The binaurals are in episode 2, so have 2 headphones.
All right, well, headphones on. Okay, so thank you so much, Mark, for coming on. We'll link everything in the show notes, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. You take it easy.